Primetime Local News, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Local News. I'm Callan Dunlop. Thanks for joining us. After a week of fun-filled competition, the Saskatchewan Summer Games have officially wrapped up. I was at the closing ceremony and had a chance to find out more. The Saskatchewan athletes gathered once again at the Civic Centre to celebrate all that was done this past week. From awards given out to highlighting all the work done behind the scenes, this event was tough for some to see be over.
It is a bittersweet moment as we, celebrate what we've accomplished this past week and what these athletes have accomplished this past week, and just so happy that everything went so well, and our organizing committee did one heck of a job bringing this to Lloydminster, organizing this with very little flaws, with very strong support from our community.
Throughout the week, many athletes took home medals for their district teams. But whether or not they won or lost had no impact on the energy level in Lloydminster.
They were fantastic. It was such an exciting week. We started last Sunday with
super fun. They were super fun.
With the opening ceremonies, and it was full of energy and hype, and the kids got going. And then the week of sport began. Our volunteers jumped into action, and everyone just came together as the city.
Athletes did their thing all week long. Did their thing.
These games wouldn't have been possible without the sponsors backing the event, the volunteer support, and the athletes making the most out of the experience.
Every time that we've talked to these athletes or had an interaction with them, they have been such an amazing group of individuals. They have been polite, they have been so grateful. Our team and our volunteers and our community put a lot of effort into making this event a first-class event for our athletes and giving them the experience that we hope that they will take back and remember for years and years and forever, possibly forever.
The 2026 Saskatchewan Winter Games was announced to be held in Meadow Lake. Callan Dunlop, Primetime, Local News. It's time now for This Week in Retrospect. Here is our Ravi Jayaseelan.
This Week in Retrospect. We take it back to 1990 when a large debt amassed by the Provost Hospital Board concerned citizens.
The Provost Hospital Board has gotten itself into a bit of hot water. The hospital has amassed a debt of $775,000, which has been accumulating since 1984. This is a fairly large debt, and people in Provost have voiced their concern. Mel Downing is the hospital administrator, and he says the debt is high because of the high fixed costs. He adds the plan that is going into effect shortly will save the hospital a great deal of money.
Yes, there is a bed closure. We have to cut back to try and deal with this deficit. We will be trying to save approximately $150,000 a year.
The board has been reluctant to hold a public meeting, which has confused some people. Downing says the board feels the public has been well informed through newspaper stories and press releases, and a public meeting is not necessary. Ken Knox is the mayor of Provost, and he disagrees with Downing. He says the reaction to the debt has been mixed, but mostly concern. Knox says the decision to close the beds came as a shock, and because of the shock, he feels the board should call the meeting.
My own personal opinion is that if a public meeting were to be held, it would probably alleviate a lot of the anxieties and concerns. People would be able to ask questions that are really bothering them and probably get some answers.
He adds the board gave the town the impression that everything was going smoothly, and then there was a huge debt. Because of that, he would like the hospital to let people know ahead of time if there is a problem and what they are going to do about it. Butch Fisher is the MLA for Wainwright, and he thinks the people of Provost are just panicking, and he's disappointed that the town hasn't offered to help out. When it comes to blame, he puts some of it on the board, but he adds the government had a lot to do with it too. He also adds the problem is bad, but it's not unique to Provost.
Remember, Provost is not the only hospital that's gotten into this situation. And we are fortunate in the fact that the bed closure here, they close some beds in Edmonton when they run 99% full, and that's really got to hurt. when we're looking at bed closure here, we shouldn't have a big effect on people here.
Although Fisher does not entirely blame the board, he would like to see better management practiced so something like this doesn't happen again. Kevin Wilson, Broadcast Center News, Provost.
And in the year 2000, the Canadian Boer-Goat Association works on creating a new market for Chevron.
Boer goats are hardly a common animal in Canada. There are just 1,800 registered purebreds and even fewer crossbreds. However, that's changing. The Canadian Boer-Goat Association is working to create new markets for Chevron.
Once we get various marketing channels in place for the meat part of the industry, both commercial animals and breeding stock animals, numbers are going to increase.
Most Boer goat meat is currently shipped to larger cities. The ethnic community in those centers is the major Canadian market for the product.
The ethnic market is so huge that we can't even come close to filling it with production at this point.
The association recently held their first information conference in Vermilion. The large demand for Chevron is not enough to draw more producers into the industry. De Young expects the convention will.
After this weekend, the education that they had here, we've had a lot of interest in local people getting into the business.
Marketing is the largest challenge facing Boer goat producers. However, there's another hurdle to overcome: improving the animal's public image.
I think the majority of people who aren't familiar with them see them to be skinny, shaggy, horned things that jump on Uncle Floyd's car and eat the garden. However, we are trying to project a far more positive image, and as you can see here, they are livestock. They're behind a fence. They're not running around the yard like a pet. They are very useful in range management and in complementary grazing with cattle. And
Josh Clausen, NewsHour.
And that's all for this week in Retrospect.
Retrospect is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Find New Holland products at Webb's Machinery, your dealer in Vermilion, Vegreville, Lamont, Wainwright, St. Paul, and Consort.
And we'll have more Primetime local news after the break. Preparations are underway for the annual Treaty 1 to 11 gathering, this year being hosted in a historic collaboration by the Cold Lake First Nations and Beaver Lake Cree Nation. Our Leanne Sanders spoke to the communications coordinator about the significance of the gathering being held in late August.
I am here today with Daniel McLaughlin, and he is a media specialist with the Cold Lake First Nations. And we're talking about a huge event that is coming up in August, and it's the Treaties 1 to 11 gathering. I know it's a huge, huge gathering. The treaties obviously going from one coast to well into Ontario. Tell me more about it.
Well, the Treaty 1 to 11 gathering is kind of an exciting event for us. It's the first time that Cold Lake First Nations has hosted, and it's the first time that Cold Lake First Nations has co-hosted with Beaver Lake Cree Nations. So it's neat because we're collaborating together on this event. So the Treaty 1 to 11 gathering is a place where we can invite everybody across Turtle Island from all of the treaties and even the non-numbered treaties or kind of the modern treaty areas. And we can put everybody in the same room and kind of discuss the issues with treaties that are kind of popping up every day, or pre-existing problems, or certain things that are kind of impending or a threat to the treaties as they currently stand. So it's a really good opportunity for us to bring, like I said, everybody from across the board collectively in one spot.
Not to put you on the spot, but what are the most pressing issues, I guess, that could possibly affect the treaties in our modern day life right now?
Well, as kind of the treaties have been evolving, there's been changes, there's been subtle erosions to the treaties, there's constant legislation that's passed or attempted to pass or that's developed that will change the way the treaties kind of exist. There's modernization in effect that they want to do, and if you're familiar with any of the white paper 1.0 or 2.0 that's come out, they can be a threat to the way that the treaty is structured. UNDRIP and CANDRIP also changes the way that the treaties can be enacted or modernized. So all these things continually keep happening. As it sits, Treaty Nations we protect the treaties, we honor and respect, and we try to live that treaty way of life. There's a lot of inherent rights that come along with those treaties. That some of those treaties aren't very old at all. Some of them are 150 years old. Some of them are less than 50 years old. So we want to enshrine and protect those rights, and then we want to work with other treaty nations and understanding what those rights are. So the Treaty 1 to 11 gathering opens the door to all of those numbered treaties, because there's subtle variances in all those treaties where we can communicate freely with each other. We can share experiences of good or bad things that are happening with those treaties and with those rights, and things that have changed or not changed. And we can collectively stand together to help protect those rights moving forward.
Is there concern at this time, if there is a possible change in government at the federal level, that some leaders or parties may not be as supportive of the treaty relationship and could possibly erode it as well?
Absolutely. That's every election cycle. That's a concern, as well as the passing of the Queen and the new King. Those all affect treaty rights. So the King is the other side of that treaty rights holder currently. The federal government, the provincial changes in the provincial government also tends to change the way they view or see treaty rights. We've had a very positive reaction so far, it seems to be, from current governments. Current federal governments, there's been challenges in courts. There's been all kinds of different things that are rearing up, or changes that they look at making. So, I mean, the situational landscape is always evolving. On the Indigenous side of those treaties, we always seem to be reactive and defensive to those. I think getting everybody collectively on the page and moving forward offensively is a better option. Things that maybe, as we're the other side of that treaty holder, we want to see done, or how we want to see those rights protected over time, is important. So it's interesting that I think the next election cycle, kind of everything's up in the air. Will they continue to protect those treaty rights? Will they respect them, or will they try to add additional legislation or changes to them? So,
all right. So outside of the political discussions, what else is going to be, talked about, or what can people expect that are attending that gathering?
Well, the gathering this year is really focused on educating the youth and training the young ones on what treaty rights is. Obviously, there's a giant disconnect when it comes to how youth are recognized treaty versus the others that have been around for quite a long time. So it's about educating. We're going to bring out all of the youth from the area. We want to teach them what the treaty rights are. We want to get them practicing treaty rights. So traditional hunting, fishing, berry picking, anything that's enshrined in those original treaty rights. We want to expose that to a brand new generation, so that moving forward, they can carry that fire forward. So that's actually the theme for this year's event, is carrying the fire forward. We want the youth to understand, to learn, and to know what those treaty rights are, and be able to teach their next generation of those treaty rights. Because the treaties, they're from time immemorial. They're as long as the grass grows and the river flows. So there's no end date to those treaties. So the only thing that's going to end those treaties is people not understanding what those treaties are and not protecting them moving forward. So that's the main focus of our event this time.
Great, yeah. Having the youth involved and being proud of who they are and what they are and where they're from.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Daniel, those are my only questions for you today. Is there anything that I may have missed that you might want to mention?
No, those are great. We do appreciate the interview. What we want to do is we want to invite everybody publicly to come. Any treaty members, if you want to come on out, you can go to our webpage, clfns.com, treaty gathering. Registration is also available online through Eventbrite. Just search Treaty 1 to 11 gathering. It can be all taken care of online. You can go and you can send us an emails at treatygathering@clfns.com if you'd like to register manually. We'd like to see everybody right across Turtle Line coming out, enjoying the fair event. Outside of all the fun stuff that we're doing in the daytime that pertains to treaty rights, we are planning special events throughout the evening. We've got some pretty interesting headliner names that are going to come out and perform. I can't release any of them yet, but I will be releasing them shortly. So as much as it's a fun conference and we want everybody to learn and take away experiences that they can pass on, there will also be a lot of fun stuff to do in the evenings as well. So we're really looking forward to seeing all the new faces come out.
Okay, well, Daniel, thank you so much, and I wish you luck with the event.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
The 2024 Saskatchewan Summer Games took over Lloydminster last week and were a huge success for the athletes, organizers, and the community. Our Thomas Wildman talked with one of the co-chairs of the Games for a wrap on the week.
Today I'm joined by Aaron Rollick, the co-chair of the Saskatchewan 2024 Summer Games, and we are here to do a little bit of a wrap-up of the great events that took place this past weekend here in Lloyd. And so thank you so much for joining us once again, Aaron.
Anytime, buddy.
All right, Aaron, so let's just get your initial thoughts. We're now a day away from the closing ceremonies, or I guess it was on Saturday. Just as it's all come to a close, what were some of the main highlights for you as one of the organizers?
Just our community and how they came together. I mean, hitting over 1,000 volunteers, how everybody pitched in to battle the heat and then the wind and the smoke and the rain. I said it to the kids at the closing ceremonies. I mean, they were Saskatchewan tough. They just kept smiling and kept going through. And just the joy from the athletes was to me the highlight of the whole week.
And so we'll start at the beginning of the week, and you mentioned the heat and all those initial events. Just how did that first slate of events go, and some of the challenges that maybe came up, but some of the real heights from those first slate of events?
Well, the first block of events, the first 3 days, got through the opening ceremony, and then we had some smoke settle in from some fires, so we had to deal with the sports on that. If we were going to make any changes, some things are shortened up, and the provincial sport associations deal with that and keep us in the loop. And I guess kind of the theme of the week might have been pivot. I mean, get ready to pivot and make it work to keep the kids smiling and competing. And we powered through that, and then we get to the second block, the last 3 days, and we had the wind and the rain, and again, we just kept going. We went to one ball diamond just to make things go. I mean, soccer battled through up at VLA, so we just continued, and everybody did it with a smile on their face.
And so you mentioned VLA and mixing it up with the ball diamonds. Just how, and you mentioned the community as well, how important was the community and all the city facilities and coming together and making it happen, and especially with those new improvements that the city will see for years and years to come to all those facilities?
Yeah, that's the most important thing, was community. I mean, the volunteers coming out in droves, making sure the shifts were filled, people were at all their posts, smiling, welcoming people to town, the work by city staff to make sure facilities were ready, as well as our volunteers at the venues. I can't say enough about just everybody chipping in to make it a success.
And then finally, with that success, there was a lot of other businesses that helped out, whether it was at the hotels and catering, and just restaurants in general. What were some of the big economic impacts? Just a little bit of an overview for the businesses as well as for the SAS Summer Games as a whole.
Well, I'll tell you, we heard from businesses throughout the week that just randomly call people on our committee, councillors, the mayor, just saying, this is awesome. I mean, patios were busy, restaurants were busy. Of course, Lloyd Comp being the village was incredible, the amount of things happening there, but the amount of people around. And you and I talked off air a little bit about just some numbers. I mean, I can quote a few, just in the village and at Lakeland College, and we served 18,000 meals. I mean, 900 box lunches go out to keep the kids going at the events. Almost 13,000 juice boxes. I mean, these kids can demolish food like crazy, but with them come the army of fans, parents, grandparents that put money in our community, eating at the restaurants, shopping in town, and that's a great thing. Economic Development did an economic impact study during the games, so we're really curious to see the results of that report and really show people the effect that these large events have on our community.
And so my final question for you, Aaron, it was a long time coming to get the Saskatchewan Summer Games here to Lloydminster, but now that it's over, is Lloydminster looking at possibly maybe hosting the Winter Saskatchewan Summer Games in the near future, or maybe making a bid for another Summer Games?
I would think down the road. You kind of look at every decade, every 16 years, we're probably in line to host something. I mean, obviously with Synovus Hub being built at some point, we're going to want to crank it up and showcase that, whether it's, to Saskatchewan, Alberta, whatever it may be. I think we've really put ourselves on the map with this and reminding people we're a destination city. We can host large events. We have the army of volunteers to do it, and just showing what we have. Our venues are spectacular. We have the hotels, we have the space, and more importantly, we have the people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for being a huge cog in making the SAS Summer Games come to Lloydminster. I enjoyed covering it so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed having us out, and we definitely look forward to what you do next, as well as the next Saskatchewan Summer Games whenever they come to Lloydminster next.
Let's take a quick look at your 3-day forecast for Lloydminster, and we are in for some very hot weather. Not as hot as last week, but this is a little more manageable. A high of 24 tomorrow with some clouds and a low of 13 there. And Wednesday, we're going to see a high of 28 and a low of 13. And Thursday, we're going to see a high of 26 and a low of 11, and it's going to be mostly sunny on that day. That is all the time we have today for Primetime Local News. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great night.